Welcome to What's Up at Work, the podcast that's all about real talk with the company leaders shaping Northeast Ohio's top workplaces. We're diving into the stories, strategies, and sometimes hilarious moments that come with creating the thriving teams that drive the region's most successful businesses forward. Whether it's a CEO sharing their leadership philosophy or an HR exec spilling their best people-first strategies, we're here to give you insights you can actually use to build a better workplace. Hit play and let's talk about what's really up at work. Welcome back to What's Up at Work. I'm Sam Clyde Schroeder, Vice President of Sales and Marketing at ERC. And today we're tackling a tough leadership challenge: how to grow and innovate without losing sight of your biggest competitive advantage, your people. No one understands this better than today's guest, Chris Adams, President and CEO of Park Place Technologies. Under his leadership, Park Place has become a global IT powerhouse, serving over 21,500 customers across 180 countries. But what truly sets Park Place apart is its investment in its people, culture, and award-winning workplace. Today, we're diving into leadership, workplace trends, and what it means to be a tech company that cares. Let's get started. Welcome to What's Up at Work, Chris. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about Park Place, and we're going to start off with the fact that you've been there since 2006 and became CEO at 2019, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
Sure. So the CEO, Ed, and I were friends before me, and Ed was from Boston. He didn't really know anybody in Cleveland, so he moved here to be CEO. I was the only guy he knew, so he called me up because he needed a CFO. So I went there for that reason, and over time, progressed through the company. I went from CFO to president and COO. So I ended up running everything, and then when Ed retired, took over for him as CEO. And I would say now, really, what I do is sales. When you run a company, it's mostly about growing the top line. So being, whether it's customer related or M&A or new products, just figuring out ways to grow the business is my primary role because revenue cures. So if you have more revenue, you can do a lot of other things.
Can you talk a little bit about CFO and CEO/sales? That's a big jump. Is your background in finance?
Yep. So I started out in accounting and then went into some M&A type work. Mm-hmm. And, accounting wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do, but, it seemed like as a kid, I didn't think I would need a degree, for example, to do sales. That I could do it. I thought the discipline there was more other skills versus accounting's a science, and you learn it in college. And to be honest, to run a business, you really have to be good at particularly finance and analytics, but accounting as well. You got to understand your P&L, what moves it. You got to understand the root cause, which is really analytics, to make good decisions. So all those things are foundational for me in running the business. I think people laugh at when they show up to meetings, if they don't have the data and the analytics, we don't get in the discussion about the next steps. They get sent home to do their homework because to get the good root cause, you got to get kind of the emotion of decision making out of it and try to get to the data and facts before you get the emotion, before you get passionate about which direction to go. So that's kind of has always been pretty helpful for me having that background. And honestly, that these days everybody that works with me knows that they have to polish those skills to me in meetings and things. Whether they like it or not, it is what it is.
Right. You want the data.
Yeah.
How about going to COO from CFO? What were you doing differently?
That wasn't all that difficult in that, running a business operationally requires just good process and common sense and, detail orientation. How do you walk through the steps of whatever it could be? In our business, we do data center support. So understanding that process and all the nuance and, honestly, again, running a business, so making good decisions, but also I expect people to really know their businesses. How do they operate? And those two things are critical to making good decisions. So to understand where your business is going and then look at, so you might have, a concern, a theory, you might notice some margin decline, whatever. You got to understand the business process then. So being, growing up some in operations there, I know our business inside and out. It was a real benefit to continue to move along the scale because I have probably all three legs of the stool now when it comes to running a business, which is the finance operations and the sales. So And the other thing about it is, when you don't have that background, sales and operations can often be at head,
At odds.
at odds with each other. And understanding both of their motivations helps solve problems, because neither side really, at the end of the day, they're both doing what they think is in the best interest of the business. So if you can find the common ground to explain it to them so that they get to the root cause of the issue and make a decision, but understand what the other side's perspective is as well is pretty helpful. So learning that, I'll constantly remind them in the meetings that, where the other person's coming from and why. And then, so both perspectives matter. Maybe growing the business matters the most, but if you grow a business that you can't support your customers, you're going to be out of business. Absolutely. And so if they don't have good relationships and solve problems well, it's not a long-term scalable strategy. So having the ops background is pretty helpful.
That is a very cool thing to say. And being CEO, you get to see both sides of it and care about both sides of it and understand where they're coming from, which brings us to you becoming CEO. Under your leadership, Park Place has grown exponentially. So you expanded internationally, you're making acquisitions, you're investing in your new campus, which we'll get to in a little bit here. But what's been the biggest lesson in scaling a company while maintaining such a strong culture?
Look, that's probably the hardest part about scaling is, when you have 50 employees, you know everybody's name, you can do a lot of unique little things that you maybe can't do at 200. You maybe start not maybe knowing everybody's name. People aren't in different cities, states, or locations. And so teaching the people around you what the culture should be, and then they go and do the same thing, whether it's in your locations and knowing people's names, knowing, what the kind of secret sauce of your culture is. In our company, I would say is work hard, we'll take care of you. That's kind of our culture. And so making sure the people around me knew that, and then the people around them now know that as we continue to scale. When you start doing M&A, it gets difficult because they have a culture. Mm-hmm. And so some of developing a culture is also bringing those people in. It's kind of like how the Romans built their empire. They absorbed cultures, but then they indoctrinated some of those philosophies into their culture. And, 1 + 1 is 3. We've been doing that as well, where we would bring in, could be a domestic or international acquisition. And, you're going to start cherry picking through some ideas they have, because then they feel like they're part of the bigger engine and that they get to contribute to decisions. And, at the end of the day, people like to know that their work is recognized. And when they accomplish something, that someone is appreciative and values it. And so that's a lot of what we do in different ways, trying to show people we're paying attention and that we're appreciative. And so scaling that is tough. You got to teach people that that's how you do it. And you got to teach people, and then probably do expats or relocate people or bring them into your corporate environment for longer periods of time so they can absorb it. It's not just lip service, and then they can go execute it.
Right. And I mean, one of the biggest pieces of feedback that your employees give is that they feel seen, and that the onboarding and folding in process when acquisitions happen is really smooth and structured. And I think that plays a big part in why their feedback is so excellent.
Yeah, M&A is not about buying companies, it's about integrating them. You get fired if you don't integrate it well. So anybody that wants to do acquisitions, just make sure you have a plan to bring them in and fold them in effectively.
So obviously, Park Place's ultimate success is on the revenue side. And it comes down to finances, money in, money out. We all know that. But that only happens because of your people. You can't lead an industry without top performers. And the real success means that you're creating a workplace with the best people, and you're doing exactly that. You have some of the industry's top talent, and let's talk about why. First of all, what does being a great workplace mean to you?
Well, for me, and you talked about scaling, I'd like to get to the end of my career where we were always in an environment where we were able to grow the business. We have profit share, make sure that we're always paying it, create upward mobility for people. So as the business scales, it's a team effort. Everybody feels like they're part of the success, and doing that at each interval of success is difficult. But that's pretty important to me. I want to get to the end that people said, you know what, we all won together. No one got left on the field. So that's kind of how I think about the definition of a great workplace. And to do that, honestly, I explain this to the employees a lot, that if you don't explain why you got to grow, it can be difficult because growth creates pressure for employees. It's not always easy. It could be really dynamic and challenging. But if you don't grow, if you're not growing in business, you're dying. And, I tell the employees, like, I can go out and get 6% these days on a CD. Mm-hmm. So why would you invest in Park Place? If you have to exceed an investor's risk profile and other investments if you want to be in a dynamic work environment. So getting to 8-10% growth is our target as a company, because I can then share that with the employees. If we're successful, I can make sure that everybody succeeds. If we're at 5 or 6%, and this is not us, it's all businesses. So I pull back the kimono. I tell them what our business constraints are and what the expectation is, and why we do the things we do, and then if we are successful at those things, how they participate. And
that's a really interesting point.
It could be financial, because that's a lot of it, but a lot of it is other things. How you invest. You talk about the campus and all that, but how you invest in any number of things that are part of the work environment for employee. All those things matter, but you got to remind them. And could be benefits. Like we are market-wise, we pay a significantly larger portion of benefits than other companies typically do. So trying to make sure that they know all the ways that we're contributing back to make it a better place than our competitors.
Right. It's about the total rewards. It's not just about what's in the paycheck.
Yeah.
How transparent are you with your employees about all of the financial aspects that you just explained?
It depends on the topic. Mm-hmm. We're not the type of company that we're going to show everybody's salary. That's not our thing. We're in tech, but we're not that kind of tech company. Maybe it works for others. It's not something I would do, but we do, they get a total reward statement. They understand their contribution, our contribution, for example, on benefits. We've got pay grading scales, so they kind of understand that. I'll get, in our surveys, last time someone asked for me to share our salaries. That's not something I would do.
Right.
I understood and appreciated the question, but mm-hmm. I don't know what really the upside in that is. I mean, I think sometimes people have to remember, a job's a job. It's a mutual agreement, and both sides have to be respectful and appreciative of it. So it's not just what the employer has got to do for the employee. We really want to find great people that are top performers, and then we want to keep them engaged and excited to be there.
Absolutely, and that keeps them working hard.
Yeah, well, and their natural instinct is probably to work hard. It keeps them at our company working hard instead of another.
That's a great point, and we'll get to more of that in a second, because tech's a competitive business.
Very.
And you've done a great job with retention. We'll get 87%, folks, is what Park Place has done in the last year. But before we get there, you mentioned total reward statements and employee feedback, and all of that really aligns with North Coast 99, which is an award that you've won for 15 years now. And it's actually run by my company, ERC, so we're both very familiar with it. And one of the largest driving factors behind it is anonymous employee feedback. So plenty of companies talk about having a great culture, but your employees year after year tell us that you're walking the walk. And you believe and you prove that you believe in great culture. What do you think drives such repetitive employee feedback, such great year-over-year employee feedback? What do you think is driving that?
Again, it goes back to it's a team. We're all going to win or lose together. I'll give you an example of this.
Please.
So we have a President's Club trip at our company, and it's top performers in the entire company. Now, you have a sales background, right?
I do.
Normally, these are sales trips.
Right.
But in our company, they're not exclusively sales. Sales is probably 40% of it, but it's every single employee in the company is qualified to go if they've been there for a year. And then what we do is we go through and take up. So sales, it's only the elite in sales. It's the top 10% that go. It's not if you hit quota. I had a boss once that I told a story at our sales kickoff that I did a performance review, and he kept telling me what a great job I was doing, but he kept giving me 3s out of a scale of 1 to 5. And I kept asking it. He said, well, you should do a good job. That is what you should do in life. You should do a good job. Doing a good job is what you're supposed to do. That's a 3. If you want to get a 5, you got to go above and beyond. So if your job is to sell, you should hit your quota, right? But the top 10% of our sellers go to our trip. But then in every department, what we do is based on the size of the department, we do the overall company math and figure out how many employees or positions we have. And it's roughly, I think it's because it's employee and guests. So I think it's close to 300. So let's call it 150 employees in the company would qualify for the trip. And it's probably 40 to 45% sales, and the balance would be others. And everybody loves that. The salespeople, I've never gotten a complaint that, why do you take all the other
You
people?
brought operations along.
Yeah, why do you take us? It's when they go and they see everybody, and truth be told, the salespeople realize that they can go every year. If they're performing, they can go every year. But these people, this might be a trip of a lifetime. And when they see them and their family or their guests there, and think about this: you're a field engineer in our company, and you're not in an office, and all of a sudden now you're at this trip. All these people, you're getting all these accolades. The people that are in your territory, the salespeople that know you, are coming up and giving you a big hug and thanking you for all the hard work. And your guest or spouse is seeing this, and they're very proud to see that. Is really the point. Is it's everybody to win, and so that's kind of a metaphor for how we would think about it. It's a team effort, and scale wise, we've been able to maintain that culture regardless of our size. I think that people treat each other well. I think that we do a good job of making sure it's not ivory tower culture, that it's not like my door is open all day. Anybody can show up. In fact, I regularly try to find those people, because what I want to know is what the person on the front line's really thinking and what their job is like, as opposed to being filtered through multiple layers. And everybody means well in the equation, but what the person 4 or 5 jobs removed might tell me about that day-to-day work is they don't know. They don't do the job. And those people are the ones actually doing the work for the company, right? Like, I'm not out there fixing things or doing those things. So trying to keep that kind of culture, making sure that everybody in the company knows that it doesn't matter their title, they're on the team and they can contribute.
And I watched you today walk through and know everyone's name as we were going through the hallways. I mean, you are living exactly what you said. You work in a very competitive industry. I mean, tech, there are a lot of people who are looking to hire the same types of people that you are. How do you come out on top in those situations? What are you doing differently than your competitors?
I think, again, going big picture is to retain talent, you got to keep growing the business and creating a dynamic environment where, that, like IT people, software developers, they like to build cool stuff. So if we can keep growing, I can keep finding new ideas for them to go develop. But if we're not growing, I can't do those new ideas, and then they get bored, right? So that's software developers as an example. Salespeople, if they can't make money, they're leaving. That's simple. So if we can't stay as a market leader in our industry with a good brand and a competitive product at a good price, so if we screw up and our pricing isn't competitive, I'm going to lose good salespeople. That's going to happen. So to me, it always just goes back to, you got to grow your business to keep the talent engaged. They got to be interested. They got to make money. They got to have upward mobility. We talked about the idea of putting a daycare in. They've got to feel good about going back to work after maternity leave. And so if someone has to make this choice about career or what do I want to do, that's a tough choice. And I wouldn't tell people what to do there. But if their decision is I want to go back to work, I want to find ways to make that better for those employees. Because, I watched for years when we did this thing, we would have great employees who would leave because they wanted to spend time at home with their families, which is a great decision. And then they would come back years later and, you have this talent and you have a gap on the resume. And so what we did is we put this program in where when we buy companies, we have these people who we keep on kind of a part-time retainer, if you will. And as we buy companies, we spin them up. And so you might have a stay-at-home parent that says, I can't work full-time. I don't and so if they can't work full-time, they're not going to have child care. But you know what? If you got 2 or 3 month gig, I'm interested. And so we started doing that. And now I think we get 20 or 30 people in that program that, whether they're they had low contracts or they're doing accounting for us on acquisitions. But it's little things like that adding up into, one big equation that you keep just trying to find ways to keep talent engaged and interested. And, sometimes, like now I see, now that we're getting older as a company, those people are coming back to work. Their kids are getting into junior high or high school. And so now they're not at home as much, or they don't need to be. And so they want to get after their career. Well, now they don't have a gap on their resume either.
Mm-hmm. And I think that you bring up a great point, which is different strategies to get people back to work, which leads us to something very unique that a lot of companies even right now are struggling with how to get employees back to the office if they do it at all. You're interesting in that even though you're in the tech space, you brought people back to the office 4 days a week back in 2021. You were right on the front edge of that. So first of all, what's your approach to in-office versus remote work? In other words, what drove you to want to get people back together in the first place?
You're building relationships. That's what work is. Like if you really want solutions to problems, when things are going smooth, that's fine. But when they aren't, what do all those people do to solve the problem? Can they all get in a room and get along and solve it? I never felt like that would be an effective remote environment. I think people are better together. I keep talking about team. You got to have the team together wherever possible. Innovation, networking, mentoring, problem solving, relationship building. All those things are much easier to develop in person. So that was just my philosophy. Not everybody loved it. I think we had probably a year during the Great Resignation. Our attrition was pretty high. But I kind of think about these things longer term. I thought about it in the context of let's give it 3 years and see what happens. Because this is, when people start coming back to work, I was thinking to myself a year ago when COVID hit and we made sure to keep everybody safe and employed and all that, they were thrilled. A year later, they're saying, hey, you don't get it. We should be remote. Like this is 12 months, right? So people had this huge swing in their approach to work. I was thinking, well, 12 months from now, it could be different again. And, what happens after you go through a bad economy, for example? Are they going to, when it's a leverage conversation and when people feel leveraged, they very rightfully so, it's good negotiated. You should take advantage of that leverage. And so people did that. And then leverage swings the other way now. Like in tech, there were some big layoffs for a while. And candidly, what I think a lot of that is, and I would explain this to people, they say, I want to go to remote. I would say, listen, think about this. If you're remote, first thing that happens is someone says, boy, we got to get them back to the office. And then that doesn't work. And then they start saying, I'm getting frustrated. They're not coming back to the office. What do I do? And then they say, well, geez, we've got this office in India. Everybody goes to work there. And what's the difference between managing a remote person here or in India? And so in tech, I think under the guise of layoffs, a lot of jobs in the 2023 fall where you saw a lot of headcount reductions were moved. I think they were moved overseas because people just didn't want to deal with that. And so that was my thinking, like, see how the long term plays out. And, we do have 1 day remote. The math guy in me explained to everybody that was 20%. That was 1/5 of your week. That's 20% remote. So I thought that was good progress. We talked about this earlier, though. But at the end of the day, what I've seen now is, I looked at our surveys, our employee opinion surveys, and that's where employees tell you what makes them happy and not. Before COVID, for eternity, it was number 1 is pay, and number 2 is opportunity, right? And then during COVID, it went to job flexibility for about 18 months. And now it's back to number 1 is pay and number 2 is opportunity, which goes back to if I can grow my business, I can keep those people happy. I can pay them more. I can create job opportunities. It seems like the remote work, some people, it's important to them. I hear about it still, but it does not seem to be the top thing. And so by just weathering the storm and keeping our value and cultures and keep performing, most importantly, I think we were able to weather that. And, our culture's good. Our retention's good. Our people seem happy. When you come to work at Park Place, it's a 4-day work environment. And so the people we hire know that. If they don't want that, they don't come to work for us. And I'm okay with that. I respect that.
And one of the things that I just saw play out is you have created an environment at your new offices, which I'm very excited to ask you about here in a minute, where people have the amenities that they do when they work from home. You've done a really, really good job of creating all of the conveniences that people enjoy about work from home, but at your office, which brings them back. I thought that was incredibly impressive. So what inspired the decision for you to invest in this big new headquarters in the first place? I mean, it's Progressive's old campus.
Yeah.
They went fully remote and you said, I'll take that.
Thank you, Progressive. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it goes back to, again, what I was telling you before about growing a business. Like growing a business enables you to do things and be more competitive and reward employees in different ways. And so the way I think about it is I'm not worried when someone gets to work. Like I used to see people playing ping pong in the cafeteria. I loved it because they're building a relationship. It's not, I'm not looking at my watch wondering what they're doing. I don't want to worry about that. I want to get good people and I want to keep them engaged. And people have different work styles. We do have flexibility. We have unlimited PTO, honestly. flexible start and finish times and all that kind of stuff. So more importantly, it was about, again, as we scale and grow, how do we keep a competitive advantage in the city now with other people that want our talent, and some have stolen it in the past. I hate that. Very competitive. So creating this environment where we can do all these cool things that others can't is the bottom line. I mean, you come in and you saw, for example, our fitness center is basically a Planet Fitness. And I don't know, I thought about it. We had all this space. It's not very expensive, and people love it, and it gets them to work because now they don't have to worry about going to the gym before at another place or after, or at lunch there's 40 or 50 people in there now over the period of lunch. I thought that is a great perk for people, and it's not very expensive. I mean, it's the space, but we happen to have the space. So maybe, a smaller company that you have to pay the rent on the space. I mean, it's a little harder equation, but the Starbucks, people love having Starbucks at the office. It's crazy, but they do. I don't know that for me that would be the reason I would stay somewhere, but some people really love having Starbucks there. They're really excited that we have a couple pickleball courts going in. Everybody's pretty thrilled about the pickleball courts. But, it's not a country club. I mean, first and foremost, to be there, you got to work hard and be on the team. And we just want the best people. And once you get them and they're working hard and doing their thing and making us better, I don't want to lose them. I want them happy. I want to do things that other people aren't doing for their employees because, again, it goes back to if we grow the business, we can reward everybody. And as you scale, you can do more of that. We're not unique. Other companies have done this as well in Cleveland, but there's not a lot. So it enables us to be more competitive.
Your amenities are really unique. What are the other top two, if you had to pick them, other top two kind of spaces or creative things you've done to make the office more unique and more community oriented?
Well, if you can put a food service option in the office, that's a big difference for people, but that's a scale thing. You got to get big enough. And so we have now a decent sized cafeteria for employees that has a lot of different options. Early on it's been packed. I imagine in the summer when the weather's better, they can go outside. It might not be quite as packed, but I think that makes a big difference. I think the daycare will be a huge amenity. It's not open yet. We're still in the process, but I always think about that. I don't, if someone makes the choice to go back, I want to do everything I can to keep them engaged and happy. And we have 90 days of maternity leave and paid. I remember thinking about that. You give people 6 weeks of paid, and I thought, well, it's not a lot of money to go to 90 days, but it's a huge benefit. And then if you tack on like the daycare and after that, I think that having your kids there at the office, and maybe you could just pop down and say hello on a bad day, or just if you're feeling bad about the fact that you're there, that's a big difference than if your kid's in another location, you can't see them. And so helping people in those, and with those big decisions with their career, I think that's probably one of the biggest ones. We do all kinds of stuff. We've got, health fairs. We have mammogram truck come twice a year. I'm thinking about putting in a physical therapist because we have got the facility. And again, when you have that, people never go because they don't have time to squeeze it into lunch. And it's physical therapy's 50 minutes. You got to get there. You got to change. You got to get out. Well, if I put it in the office, I think it's much more feasible for people. So doing that kind of stuff. But I would have to say, I think the cafeteria is huge. The daycare is huge. The people love the barista. That they really do.
That's Starbucks, man.
Yeah, that's big. The basketball is good, but we've had basketball leagues for a while, so I don't know if that is it. The number one is going to be the fitness center, though. Mm-hmm. I think that's the number one driver of employee satisfaction. They really do seem to like it.
Yeah, having seen all of these spaces just earlier today, I think every single one of them was impressive. The fitness space was insane, but I really do appreciate the thoughtfulness of the daycare that you're putting in. As a woman who wants to have kids and maintain my career and all of those things, the fact that you're considering those, the demographics that aren't you, but you have daughters, you understand that this is something that's important to many employees and many women and fathers and family members. And I think it's really empathetic and considerate that you are providing something like that.
And exciting. I love it. I love kids.
Me too.
I love babies. So the other thing I want to do is I love babies, and I want to get in our, I show you the yoga room, but I keep trying to find a place where we could get a bunch of puppies in and have puppy day, and you could just go in there and play with the puppies. It's puppy. I don't think there's better therapy than a room full of puppies. So it would make the employees thrilled. We have like take your dog to work day, but I think puppy day would be a great one too.
I completely agree. Big dog lover over here. I execute all of these ideas. I'll come visit all the time.
I got to say, though, just I want to go back to it. It isn't a country club. You got to work hard. But talk about puppy day. Everybody's thinking, hey, does anybody work at this place? But our people are amazing. They just, every year we they're performing, and that's why we can do these things.
Right. You want to reward people for hustle.
Yeah.
And get them to keep hustling. And I think that's the way that it is. It's not a party. It's you work hard. Here's a benefit for working hard, right?
Yeah, that's really the plan.
Yeah, that's excellent. We've reached the section of our interview now called HR Hot Seat. Let me walk you through how this goes. All right. These are quick, rapid-fire questions. Give me your best answer in like 3 sentences or less.
Okay.
Ready? Let's do it. Okay. What's the most difficult construction hurdle you ran into while building out the new campus?
Oh, we've got a delay in the bus bars for our data center that seems like it just keeps getting pushed out month and month and month and month. And I don't know that we actually know when they're coming. So,
for those of us who are not tech geniuses, what's a bus bar?
A bus bar is in a data center. Power is critical. And the bus bars are it's a component in the electrical distribution in a data center. And without it, you can't finish the data center.
That helps. That was nice and distilled. Is there anything you can't start your workday without?
I probably need some form of caffeine. I don't know. It's not always coffee. Sometimes I'll drink a Red Bull or something like that, but to get the fog out.
Oh yeah. No, okay. All right, some caffeine. You have daughters. What is the coolest thing that they have taught you recently? Is it slang? Is it some fatherly lesson? What is it?
Well, I mean the slang. I don't know. They do keep me young, though. Without a doubt, they'll help me. Like I'll send them pictures of clothes or shoes or things, which one, and they definitely help me through that. I mean, having girls definitely is cool. One day, all right, here's slang.
Yeah.
I walk in and my daughter goes, "Hey, Dad, you're all dripped out." I didn't at the time know
what does dripped out mean?
So I didn't know what it meant. Dripping with style. So if someone says you're dripped out, it's dripping with style or dripped out.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I was pretty flattered and pleased.
Yeah, you're pretty pumped about that.
I was excited.
Dripped out. All right, so what's the biggest misconception about working in the tech industry?
We're not all nerds. Honestly, many of us are. I would tell you I'm a huge closet nerd. I listen, like, for example, listening to All In podcasts, and all they talk about is AI, and I'm excited to hear it, and I generally only watch Star Wars, but I think anything with space, like I talked about SpaceX, I get very nerdy, that I love all that stuff. But we're not all nerdy people. We can have fun too.
And you can be a nerd and still be cool.
I think we are
balance,
cool.
Right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, what's the most valuable feedback an employee's ever given you?
I mean, there's probably a lot, but I do remember that going back to the example I gave you about having the remote employees who were going on maternity and not coming back, and one of them was explaining like, "Hey, you taught us all this stuff, and then we're just leaving." And if you could find a way for us to do some kind of work. And then right after that, another employee walks up to me and told me how much they hated the acquisitions. And so I put the two together and thought, well, wait a minute, like that other person, if maybe we can engage her, we can take the heat off of our, acquisitions sound great again. But then when you pile on someone who's already got a full-time job, more work, they're not happy. So every time they start hearing it, now all of a sudden they get a violent negative reaction to it. So the inability to put those two together, they both combined gave me some really good advice, which was let's offload the work that would go on our full-time employees to people who maybe left the workforce that are skilled and can contribute.
I love that they're comfortable giving you feedback in general, like
I
directly. That's pretty cool.
Well, you heard John today when I walked by, and what did he say? He didn't see me. I made a joke about him always being in the cafeteria, and he said the funny thing is I don't see you working either.
Right, I see you walking around.
Yeah, he told me. I don't remember, something like that.
Oh my
he
God.
wasn't, and he's only been there a couple of weeks, John, but I've known him a long time, so he was definitely unafraid to give me feedback.
And obviously you're both working, but that sort of banter and the back and forth, like that's what makes you love a leader.
Well, I really want them to. You have to be careful not to be unapproachable, because then. If you have a catastrophic issue in your business and someone didn't tell you because you seem unapproachable. So, I'm no different than anybody else there in how I grew up and my background and my interests. And same goals. We all want to do well. So once they figure that out and you're just a normal person, then they're actually, many of them will actually get excited. And sometimes they're going to let you know everything.
Yeah, people were psyched to see you.
Yeah,
I mean, that was pretty cool.
I'm fine. I would prefer they want to tell me everything than nothing, because if they, get everything gets filtered when you lead a business. So you got to get to that front line. Like I would go out of my way to make sure for whoever the receptionist knows that they could talk to me, because I want to know who the people aren't nice to that person. Mm-hmm. That's important to me. I've told people this before. I said, you better be nice receptionist. You better be nice to the custodial people, because they see who people really are, and I ask them a lot. They don't always. Matter of fact, most of the time they won't tell me, because they know there's whoever they're going to tell on, there's going to be a consequence maybe. But that stuff's pretty important to me, to make sure everybody knows they can offer feedback.
That's really cool, and your approach to leadership is really cool, which I feel like is going to make this last question kind of maybe a softball, but I need you to tell me why Cleveland. You run a global organization. You're in 180 countries. You could go anywhere. Why stay here?
Well, I mean, to me, like Midwest culture, there's a lot of good, I've got offices everywhere. I don't want anybody's feelings hurt, but Midwest culture, is outstanding. I'll liken it to being a Browns fan. The meeting lot's full every game. It doesn't matter that the team is having a terrible year or whatever. We keep coming back, and people, it's that same work ethic that you get in the offices, and they're, just good, down-to-earth people that do their thing, come to work hard, are decent, kind, hardworking, thoughtful, treat each other well. You get that here in abundance. Cleveland as a community is great. The winters are a little rough, but the community amenities and what we have here, you're hard-pressed to find places like this, to be honest with you. And I think people find that out when they spend any amount of time here. I actually played golf with I don't say his name but I played golf with a former Guardian, and he was like, "Oh, I got traded to Cleveland." I was like, "Oh, damn!" And then we loved it. He was saying him and his wife, we loved it there. It was great. It was a great city. So I don't know. Why somewhere else is what I would say. Compete with us. It's a great place.
Why somewhere else? I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cleveland has this mix of grit and empathy that is just the best.
Yeah, grit. That's a good word. I mean, that's a lot of what we hire at Park Place is grit.
Chris, you've been just a great guest. This has been a great conversation. Before we wrap up, I just want to ask you one more thing, which is, what is the legacy you want to leave as CEO of Park Place Technologies?
I just want it to be a place where people felt like, business, you got to perform. But I want them to know that it's not, that it's about us collectively winning as a team. And if we performed, everybody prospered. And, that to be able to do that for a year or three is fine. But my goal is to be able to retire, and that would be our legacy. So that would be mine, as we had good years and everybody understood how to contribute, and if they did, what it meant to them and benefited. And, I watch, we have all these employees now growing up and their families, and they've got kids in school and cars and houses and all these things that is really rewarding to see that the business is contributing for all these families. So that's, but to make sure that we could, I want to retire and be able to have that legacy the entire time. That's my goal.
That's fantastic. It's great to see that everything Park Place is bringing to Northeast Ohio and that you're doing with the organization.
This has been fun. Thank you.
Absolutely. So that is all for What's Up at Work today. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and follow along as we continue to explore what makes workplaces great. See you next time. We hope you enjoyed this episode of What's Up at Work. Now it's time to get out there and start building better workplaces. If you need help with where to start, ERC has your back. Head to yourerc.com for exclusive HR tools, insights, and resources to help you attract and retain top talent. And keep tuning into What's Up at Work for more strategies and secrets to help leaders like you create thriving workplaces. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.